Greetings, viewers. We have here an interesting limited edition pen. This is the Retro 51 Tornado Apollo 11 50th Anniversary Limited Edition pen. So what we're dealing with here is a all-metal pen that is basically designed to look like the Saturn V rocket. The Saturn V rocket is the largest and most powerful rocket ever built to date, and was the launch vehicle for every Apollo mission, including those that successfully landed men on the moon, beginning in 1969 with Apollo 11. So that's why in 2019, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of that event. So this is essentially a fairly conventionally shaped Retro 51 pen, but the artwork, which is basically painted on the outside of the metal pen, is designed to mimic the Saturn V rocket. It's a pretty heavy pen because it's all metal, 35 grams. It has a fairly conventional clip. They didn't make the clip sort of look like anything particular relative to the rocket. There's a similar, much more expensive pen that Montegrappa has come out with, where they made the clip look like a piece of the launch tower, which I thought looked kind of cool. Would have been nice to do something like that here, but again, this is a much cheap pen. This is a $120 pen. So it's a steel nib, $120 pen. So it's a little on the upper end for what you'd pay for a steel nib pen, but it is a limited edition. There's only 1,151 of these made. The 11 for Apollo 11 and 51 for the company Retro 51. If the cap band itself is just a plain, ordinary copper-colored band that runs around the rim of the cap. The bottom finial is just sort of a flat metallic disc. The up top finial is really cool. It's a little disc image of the footprint on the moon, very much evocative of this photograph here. Common misconception is this is a fairly famous photograph. There is a common misconception that this is Neil Armstrong's first footprint on the moon. It is not. It is a footprint of Buzz Aldrin's that he took while he was walking on the moon. Around the top of the clip band, there is some wording here. It says Retro 51 Tornado, and then it has the limited edition number. So this particular one is number 358 out of 1151. It is a screw to uncap pen. It takes 1.5 turns to open. It does post. It posts quite nicely and quite comfortably, and it is not, because it's not a massively heavy pen, I'm not seeing any particular back weighting issues. I personally think it's a tiny bit short to use unposted, but that's just my personal preferences. I really like to post my pens. In the section, again, the copper color is visible here, which I think looks very nice. It has a sort of an average size section with a little bit of an hourglass shape to it, and then you get to the nib, which is a nice looking number 6 size nib. It's got some scroll work, it's got Retro 51 logo, and an EF for extra fine. I would never in a million years would have bought an extra fine pen under normal circumstances for something like this, but this is a very limited edition. By the time I got around to ordering it, unfortunately extra fine was all that's available. The other thing I would say about the nib is I think it would have been nice to have some sort of Apollo 11 commemorative engraving on the pen instead of just sort of an ordinary Retro 51 nib. But they do some Apollo 11 50th anniversary markings on the pen itself. So there's a little gold disc here that has the number 50 in gold, and then more significantly it says 50th here, and then it says 1969 2019, which looks very nice as well. So they did do a nice job on the pen body itself. To me, it would have been nice to have something like this logo perhaps on the nib, or maybe even do this footprint thing that you did. Instead of putting it there, engrave that on the nib, something like that. I just would have been nice to have that instead of sort of a generic nib, but I'm being a little bit picky, I would say. Size-wise, it's a fairly typically sized pen. Here you can see it compared to a Lamy Safari and a Pilot Metropolitan. So you can see it is pretty much spot on size-wise with both of these pens. In terms of filling mechanism, as you could probably guess, this is a cartridge converter filled pen. Uses standard international cartridges, and this converter is included. Like pretty much all Retro 51 pens, whether they be fountain pens or rollerballs or ballpoints, etc., they come in these nice tubes, really suitable for gifting. And this one really is a really nice tube. It's got gold foil here. It's got some really nice artwork and photography, etc. Here's a really nice picture of the Saturn V rocket, etc. Really quite nice. It even has the limited edition number that you get in your particular pen on the bottom. Inside, there's simply a foam holder for the pen, and then there's some standard Retro 51 paperwork, a little slip of paper that talks about the space program, etc., and it also talks about how a portion of the proceeds from this pen goes to a thing called the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation. You could read more about that as well. But a nice pen, and would make a great gift for any fan of the space program. So that is this pen. Nice commemorative edition pen that I think looks great, very sharp, very distinctive looking, and everybody knows this looks like. You take one look at this and you think, rocket. So I really kind of like that. I think they did this a very distinctive scheme, and I think they executed it quite well. But as we always said, pens were meant to write. How does this pen write? Let's find that out right now. Okay, folks, what we're writing with here is a Retro 51 Tornado. And this is the Apollo 11 50th anniversary limited edition. Again, and this is an extra fine steel nib. Now, I'm not going to complain about the nib being too fine for me, because I knew what I was getting when I bought this, but I will say, for an extra fine, this writes quite well. It is pretty smooth. It's not scratchy at all. It's not even really particularly feedbacky. I think they did a pretty nice job with this nib, and I would say in general, I'm actually quite pleased with it, despite the fact that, again, I usually don't go for nibs this fine at all. So that is pretty much. Oh, and let's see. I would say that this is not really a flexi nib at all, but as you can see, you can coax out like a tiny bit of variation there, but no, it is not a flex nib by any means. So I think that is pretty much all there is to say about this particular pen. Let's talk about this ink for a second, shall we? This ink is Colorverse 1 Small Step. And this is an ink that was part of a limited edition box set from Colorverse, also in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. So this is one small step in reference to Neil Armstrong's famous line, that's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, which is the first thing he said upon stepping onto the moon. This is basically a very nice gray. So that's basically what we're dealing with here. And I, like I said, it's a nice, pretty color gray. You know, nothing earth-shattering about this ink, but I do like it quite a bit. I've been generally pleased with Colorverse inks in general, particularly the ones from this Apollo 11 set. None of them have disappointed me yet. So there we go with that. So that's what this ink looks like on this Rhodia paper. Let's take a quick look at it on Tomoe River paper, just to get a slightly different perspective. Okay, so like we said, this is Colorverse. One small step. And this, like I said, I think this writes quite nicely. And it's just a nice gray. It's dark enough to use for general purposes. A lot of gray inks sometimes come out a bit too light to be practical, but this I think is quite practical and a pretty nice color. I would imagine if you did this in a broader pen, you might be able to get a little bit more in the way of color variation or shading, etc. It's kind of limited into what you get to see from a special effects perspective in a nib this fine, because this extra fine is quite fine. But there you go. I think that'll just about do it for this video. What do we think? I think so. So, as always, I thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not already done so. Please comment. Please keep those thumbs up coming. And as always, until next time, have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.